Oh, okay. We were talking about kind of the difference between eating to hunger before, right, when you felt that you needed to lose weight, and you felt bad about your body, where you felt like insecure with certain people about your body, right? I give a kind of a description. Can you describe before, like, what it felt like for you?
Eating?
Yeah, well, the eating. How hard was it to eat to hunger when you felt bad about your body?
Well, I'm not even sure. I didn't pay attention to it at all. And even when I tried to do it, it was just a complete out-of-control feeling, which made me feel bad, which made me eat more.
Yeah. So I just said a little bit ago, I asked you, the body you have right now, of which is not your ideal, right? When you think back to the ideal body that you used to hold yourself to, this is not it. In fact, you had done a round of the protocol, lost a bunch of weight, and then you binged your way back to even. Are you heavier than you were than when we started? Or about the same?
Probably a little bigger.
Yeah, you binged your way here, right? Because you were having the pressure to keep your weight low. You felt bad that you had regained. There's this sense of shame because people saw you thinner and now they're seeing you fatter. There's all that pressure, right? Then you had your, your husband's ex-wife who's orthorexic and really health righteous and very much food righteous. And, you're getting judged by her or whatever. And having to surrender the fact that you've got to be okay with who you are, regardless of who she is, blah, 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 blah. And you get to this point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. The binging is horrible. Feeling ashamed about yourself is horrible. And you get to the point where you're either get on a diet or deal, right? You kind of sat in that little spot for a while. It's a shitty spot to be in because you just feel shitty.
Yeah.
Emotionally and physically, but you know you're not going to diet because you can't suffer. You're not going to get back on that rat wheel again.
Right.
So the only alternative to feel better is to go and look at, well, if I have to be this fat, should I feel bad about who I am? Should I care about what she thinks of me? You have to go and you have to dissolve the beliefs that make you feel bad about it. So at this point, I had asked you, if this is the body you have to live in, imagine you being 80 years old, living all the way up to that point into your 90s with this body. It's never going to change between now and the day that you die. And you said, I'm okay with that.
I am.
That's kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, it is a big deal.
And it makes a big impact on your eating, right? So because you don't feel bad about your body anymore, how does that influence how you feel about food, especially food that you used to label as bad? How do you feel eating those foods now that you don't feel bad about your body?
Well, number one, I actually taste them. It's
Yeah.
not sailing past my tongue and, down to my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm actually enjoying them. I'm able to eat them without them making me sick, which is great. And I eat them when I'm hungry. They don't have the same pull. I know that's what you want me to say. They don't have a pull. I don't think about them sitting in the kitchen. I'm not in the other room, trying to make myself not go in the kitchen and eat these things. I don't think about it.
Mm-mm. And so in other words, is this as hard? Is it difficult to eat to hunger? So compare the concept of eating to hunger, which is the same concept, right? That concept of eating to hunger has not changed, regardless of your need to be thin or your need to be okay with yourself. No matter what, that's the same concept. However, applying it when you feel bad about your body and you have pressure to lose weight is very different than it is when you don't feel bad about your body and you don't need to lose weight. Very different.
Well, yeah, it's like you can't when you feel bad about your body. It's because you don't have any control. And when you are eating to hunger, the thought that goes into my mind, I don't want to feel full. I don't want my stomach to hurt. Which, that thought would never even enter into, the flurry of activity that's happening in my mouth, before.
No, because you just felt bad about what you ate and you felt like you failed. So you might as well eat the whole thing. So the decision to eat has nothing to do with taste and pleasure and euphoria. It has nothing to do with the food. It has to do with your shame about eating and feeling like, well, if I've already failed, I might as well give myself freedom to eat everything on the bad list of foods, and I should eat everything that's here. So you described going out to Mexican food with your husband. And there was chips and salsa or something like that. And you had said before... Chips and
queso, one of my favorite things.
Chips and queso, which before would have been like a binge trigger.
Yeah.
Meaning, when we say binge trigger, that means it would have brought about shame. You ruined it. Bad. You can't handle it. It's too good. You should avoid it. I mean, think of the conversations that you used to have about chips and queso. Now, and that conversation only had strength, only had power or validity because you felt bad about your body. Meaning, I have to lose weight, and those foods are going to make me fat. Those foods conflict with my desire to lose weight. I can't eat them. Even though they taste good and you really like them. So on the other side of this, which is I don't need to lose weight. I'm not going to do this so that I can feel better about myself. I'm willing to face my vulnerability with my husband's ex-wife, who's a food supremacist and a thin supremacist and has her own eating disorders, right? You go through the actual issues around why being overweight or being fat and being okay with those things, that you can tolerate those things more so than you can tolerate trying to fix it ever again, right? You lose the need to lose weight. It's no longer a condition of yours to be happy. You don't feel bad about it. You change your beliefs about thin supremacy. And ultimately, what happens to the power of the chips and queso?
It doesn't have any power.
Yeah. It's like, because you're not doing anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with chips and queso because you don't believe that they're bad for you anymore and you don't believe that they're harming anything. So you give yourself the freedom of chips and queso, okay? And how did it turn out for you on the other side where you don't feel bad about your body, even though it's bigger than it was before?
It was a non-issue, and I mean, I was just shocked that I could sit there with it sitting in front of my face and really not have the desire to stick my entire face in there until it was all gone.
Did it require self-control?
No.
Did it require that you withhold yourself? And do you need to have, here's how much you can have. So we're going to portion size it. You need to make sure you have portion sizes to keep you in control. Did you need that?
No. That's why I was so shocked because it was so easy.
Yeah, well, because the body's managing it. That's the ease of it. So it tastes good. So now you're eating this going, wow, this is good. I love the salty and the spicy and the crunchy. And there's creamy and it's hot and it's citrusy. And it's like all of this pleasure in the mouth that you're actually tasting now. There's no shame about it. There's no guilt about it. It's not going anywhere. So when you feel satisfied, meaning you don't feel full, you don't want to be full anymore. You've done that enough to yourself. You feel good. You don't feel deprived. You don't feel like you need to eat the rest.
Well, it's like a miracle because...
Well, it's a miracle compared to how crazy it was before.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because I could actually sit there and have a conversation without eyeballing how much was left in the bowl and everything else. I was actually there.
Yeah, and you watched your husband eat the whole thing.
I did.
And how did he feel afterwards?
Like shit.
And how did it feel to just be like, holy crap? So, in the end...
I thought it was pretty funny.
It is funny because you witnessed someone else do what you've been doing. And the other thing, though, is your husband doesn't have shame about it. He was just eating because it's so good.
No.
Right? You had incredible amounts of shame, and you would have been so uncomfortable. Then think about what you would have had to have done the next day just to feel better or adequate.
Right.
You know, someone who gets the severity of a panic attack, or they would have puked it up. They would have had to have micromanaged away. How do I go to the bathroom? How do I puke this up? How do I get rid of this? Because now I'm having a severe sense of I'm going to die of obesity just because I ate this. How do I feel thin now?
Right.
You know, I would have actually gone for a run in the middle of the night to fix that. That's what I would have done. Right? All stemming from you can't have that because that's going to make you fat, which is anti your happiness. You will be happy and safe and free when you're thin enough. So that food is taking away your happy, your safety, and you're thin enough. So you can't eat it. So when you do eat it, you feel like you've failed your goals to be happy and thin. So you might as well just eat it all because you can't have it tomorrow and you can't have it for the rest of your life. And then you're told that you're addicted to food when really you're not even getting anything out of the food besides shame and a temporary moment of freedom. I get freedom to eat it. That's it.
And it's killing me and it doesn't even taste good and I don't even want it.
Mm-hmm. I don't even want it, you know?
I hate that feeling.
Because it's so fresh in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, our last sessions, the last, I would say 5 sessions have been at the end where you struggled a long time sitting in, I'm never going to diet, but I feel bad about myself. I'm never going to diet again, but I feel bad that I'm eating this. I shouldn't be eating this, but I can't stand dieting ever again. And that's when you gained a bunch of weight. Right? That's when which made it harder. Because now you're getting fatter and fatter and fatter. And you're like, I got to fix it. But I can't even stomach what it's going to require to fix it. So you were stuck, kind of wedged into this high pressure environment. And the only, what would you tell the listener? What was the most powerful thing that you did for relief? Because some people are listening to this going, I don't know how to get out of that point either. That's where I'm at. Can't diet again. I can't fix this again. I'm super done. But I still feel bad about my weight. I can't lie. I want it to be fixed, but I don't want to fix it ever again.
Well, I just had to accept, first of all, there's a whole lot more to me than my body. And my body is just a small part of, and it doesn't dictate what my self-worth is either. I mean, I had to really go inside and think about my soul, my person, my essence.
Don't you agree? Don't you agree? The only way you actually got to thinking that is because we had to keep the body consistently fat. If there was no hope for losing weight, that was the only way you could go into, well, then what would make my life worth it?
Oh, yeah, because I would have been off of my little trance if I was, that would not have worked.
Yeah. We did talk about multiple times, if you think there's any hope for weight loss, you're never going to go into reconstructing who am I. Mm-hmm. You won't do it because you are losing weight. You are the thin person. That's the only picture you have in your mind. It's been brainwashed to be, I'm a thin person in my mind. So if I'm not thin, I'm not who I am.
It took a lot of humility to get there.
Yes, it did. A lot of people, when I say it takes a lot of humility, holy shit, is that not the truth?
That is really what it takes. I mean, because, everybody that is like this is, we've talked about this 1,000 times, is a narcissist.
Yes, it is. A lot of people hearing that would go, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. Well, yes, you are. Actually, you are a narcissist. You might just be on the passive-aggressive side of narcissism.
Right, exactly.
You're not necessarily holier than thou, I'm going to abuse everybody, but you're playing the martyr role, which is a manipulative way of the same thing.
Right.
And it's nothing to feel ashamed of. It's not. It's a coping mechanism.
Right. So going inside and really thinking about your person.
Yeah, and do you really want to play the game of we talked about that. Do you really want to play the part of the asshole? Do you really want to play the part of I'm better than you?
No.
I know, right? Because that's
Well,
what you played for decades. How many decades did you play the part of I'm better than you? And that's what makes me feel better about myself.
40 years.
40 years. You were raised by a woman who wanted you to be better than others.
That's right.
You know, so how can you, it's, to me, again, it's not something to be ashamed of. A lot of people judge it as if you're a horrible person, but it's really just a coping mechanism. It's a destructive coping mechanism, but it mostly destroys yourself. So that
takes a lot of humility, and it also takes a lot of grace, not only on myself, but and this is something I still struggle with. Grace for other people, certain other people in my life. Who, it's just, I'm going to just continue to work on that to try to really soften my, it's just a softening, because it's like, it's hard to remember to give people grace, especially yourself.
Well, that's why. So when you give yourself grace, you're basically accepting I can only do the best I'm aware of doing. I can't hold myself to something better than where I'm at. So even if you meet someone who you're like, wow, I want to be like that, you can't hold yourself to that. You have to allow yourself to be where you're at and to develop organic and naturally. This is why I don't read self-help books. I don't read them. Because I'm only going to I know myself enough that I learn best through my own experimentation. So as a developing human being, no different than you, the listener, and you who I'm talking to, I'm learning myself naturally, right? I can't know something without actually going through the process of what it takes to understand it or be aware of whatever it is, right? So to hold yourself to some standard that you don't exist at yet, you got to question where that's coming from, right? So when you give yourself the grace of saying, I am who I am whatever it is, this is it. I've always done the best I could with what I've known. And as my awareness expands, I've done better. And that's how it works. So when you meet someone who has not learned the lessons that you've learned, right? When I have followers who are very health righteous and very thin righteous, and they believe everybody should be thinner, it's forgivable because that's their coping mechanism. They actually feel that shitty about themselves unless they're thin. That's just an indication of their condition.
And I should be able to understand that because I have experienced the same emotions. However, I have a hard time sometimes trusting the things that I'm learning, and that, if the perfectionist in me wants me to learn them correctly. Yeah,
well, let me tell you, where does that perfectionist come from? Because that's not who you are. Yeah, that's someone who wants to prove themselves.
Right.
And if you've learned that lesson, which you're learning, that means it's active, right?
Right.
This is where for me, I learned I want the lesson now. So I'm willing to take the risk and fail, because in the failure of the risk, that's where I'm going to learn this. So I don't judge myself. If I'm doing something, I'm pushing myself in an area that I'm certainly not aware of the outcome, I am giving myself the grace ahead of time to make a mistake. I'm doing the best I can with what I know, and sometimes you find out what you should have done after you get a result, right? So you're learning that perfectionism is not who you are. It's a symptom of someone who's trying to survive. It's a survival symptom. Are you surviving? And there might be circumstances where you are so laid back, you're lenient, you're not in a survival state of mind. You're more gracious and loving and open, and you feel this incredible level of love for all life on the planet. You're like a hippie on LSD without the LSD. It's just love and life. Yeah. That's what it feels like. You're open. You're higher in your state of consciousness. Your mind is more conscious and open. And then there's another moment where you're in a certain circumstance. It kind of pulls you back down. That's okay.
Yeah.
It just means that you need to think about. Don't cope. Don't, what you're learning is to be okay with discomfort. That discomfort is a message. There's a message in discomfort. You want the message, right? So I've learned to be very comfortable with discomfort because I want the message, because I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable. So what is it that I need to, what am I not aware of, or what am I closed-minded to that makes me uncomfortable? That's me, right? So in going into discomfort or in that, and you're open to feeling uncomfortable without reaction, there's so much knowledge. It just requires that you have the physical fear, the discomfort of the physical sense of inadequacy and fear, that you don't respond or react to it, that you let it be there, and all of a sudden knowledge shows up. You don't have to seek it out. It shows up. Are you starting to learn that?
Yes.
Where like, I don't do anything. I just allow myself to stay fearful, and I don't respond to it, and I open my eyes to what it is, and all of a sudden there's like, oh yeah, it's this and that and this and that. Holy shit. That's, not even worth responding to anymore. I'm okay with who I am. I don't need their approval. I'm okay if they think that I'm ugly. I'm okay if my shoes are not the newest. Right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm okay if I'm dumb. They're smarter than me. I don't need to pretend like I'm, smart. I'm only as smart as I'm willing to learn. So again, be okay with that. There are times where I get super pissy. I'm certainly not, expanded and open. I'm having a moment of judgment, right? Yeah. I have a couple clients who are married to assholes. How do you think it makes me feel the moment I hear them say, he won't let me get a job because he told me I don't make as much as him, so it's not worth working? How do you think I feel in that moment?
I would want to lash out.
Yeah. So my level goes back down, and then I have to work myself out of it. This person needs you to be there. If you get a job, he probably feels insecure. He's got little man syndrome. He's got, he needs you to be there so he feels superior. If you get a job, it's probably going to make him feel like you don't need him anymore. He wants that feeling. That's a natural feeling. So, see how I worked out of it with love. Yeah. And it's which scenario would you rather live in? The one where he's a total asshole, he's a narcissistic prick who wants a slave. He doesn't want you to be happy. He just wants you to be underneath his thumb, right? That's easy. That's an easy response.
Well, it's like my response to my husband's first wife. My first response is, clenching and wanting to lash out. But I have to remind myself. I hope one day it'll come naturally.
Well, it's not going to come natural until you actually allow her contract, her lesson to be learned for herself, and her daughter's lesson, who is now showing signs of an eating disorder, that she's going to eventually recover herself, and it's not your job. All you can do is just love. Now I sound like we're in an AA. We're in an AA class. Really, you just need to... You're like the battered wife who's supporting the dysfunctional side of the family.
Well, I am, because when she comes over here, I let her have whatever she wants.
Yeah, and we've talked about just having a conversation. Do you feel like this? You don't have to eat till you're full. This will be here when you come back. We'll save it for you. There's ways to do it that aren't manipulative and that aren't passive aggressive. And, you're just opening up a conversation, at least giving her an outlet to talk, right? You don't have to be her savior. You don't have to be her therapist. That's not your role. Even though you could, you've just recovered from what she's just starting to begin.
Right.
Because her mother is food righteous and says, you can't eat that. Oh my God, you need to lose weight. She's got a weight problem. We have to get her into a weight loss program. And how old is she? 13?
She's 12.
Yeah, 12. Yeah.
It just breaks my heart because I love her. And, I just...
It's not your problem.
I know how bad it hurts. I know what it feels like. I know how bad it hurts. So I just don't want her to feel that way, you know? And I don't want her to be, you know, I was that way for, 45 years. And that's a long-ass time.
Yeah, and what did it take for you to come out of it?
Humility.
Yeah, and you can't make that happen for her. Not just humility, but it takes the willingness to be rejected, willingness to be judged, there's a surrendering that goes into this, and a realization that these beliefs have no value, that they really don't have any power.
I know.
She will figure that out on...
When you're a 12-year-old girl, they have a lot of power.
They do, but so part of your issue here is that you're getting involved in her story. It's not your job. You know, the only thing you can do is be open to conversation. Make a conversation open. Does it feel this way? Are you feeling this or that? I mean, you're not enabling a binge. Don't enable a binge, but at least, put yourself there and think about the conversations that we've had where it really helped. And it's not, and you were seeking it. This is the other thing. She's not seeking it.
Yeah.
Someone who comes to me as an adult or with their kid, it's like, if they're not seeking, they're not going to be open to what I say anyways.
Right.
So they're not going to see the value in what I'm saying. So a lot of people watching these YouTube videos think I suck. Well, that's because they don't sense the value in it. Whereas other people watch them and go, oh my God, there's so much to these videos. It's because they need it. There's a need for it. They're ready for it. They have the humility to listen to it. Right? So you are projecting yourself onto her to a certain degree. Right? Your suffering is her suffering. But you know what? She's a totally different environment. She is a different mother. It's a different situation. You have to keep in mind that you're giving a loving environment that you never really got. Yours was always conditional. So you just have to be okay that this is not your story. This is hers. And at some point when she becomes an adult and she can vocalize some of this stuff, you can be a voice of reason to the degree she's willing to listen to it.
Yeah.
Right? The key to what I just said was the voice of reason to what she's willing to listen to. It doesn't matter your level of understanding. It's what she's willing to listen to.
Right.
So you have to accept that. The other thing too, and I recall feeling this way myself. I can accept that, for example, my parents and my family, that they believe what they believe. And I don't want to convince them not to believe it, especially because it fulfills something that they need. They need it. They should have it. And if they have consequences, then they will learn themselves. I don't have to be anti-religious for right?
I understand exactly what you're saying, and I feel that way too.
Yeah, where this is a need, for example, that your husband's ex-wife has. She needs this. This is what makes her feel good. It makes her feel safe. And if she's that insecure or that vulnerable, she should find something that makes her feel safe. That's what we all do.
Mm-hmm. It's just natural.
It's not to be taken serious by you. That's her need. It's not your need.
A mile of getting there. I mean, I really have.
Yeah. So this area for you is all I'm doing is giving it grace. Notice it's easy for you to, because you know the consequences, right? It's easy for you to be very defensive, offensive, to say, here, clearly this girl has a beautiful life, a beautiful body that's perfect, and she's made to feel that it's bad because of her mother's distorted concept of perfectionistic body image ideology. Whew, that was one hell of a quote. Right? So this is no different than me saying my brother is raising his kids in the same religion And I can predictably say this is what those kids are going to have to go through. They're predictably going to have depression. They're predictably going to be sensitive to being sexually made, a predator because they don't have discernment around reality. They're more likely to need have anxiety socially. They're going to, there's a cap. They can't progress beyond that cap. They're going to have issues. And I have to let it be their story.
That's exactly what I'm doing right now.
And so when I'm around them, I respect their decisions. If they want to, when we get together, play Christian music from church on the piano to feel comfortable, they should do that. And I listen. Right? But it doesn't make me feel more Christian and more, connected to God. It doesn't affect me the same way it's affecting them. It used to, but it doesn't anymore.
Right.
That doesn't mean I have to take it away from them.
Right.
I can handle it, right? I can let them be where they're at, and I can love them anyways. That's the beauty of giving yourself grace. That means that I can give them grace. They're doing the same thing I am. I'm not better than them. I just learned that lesson. I've learned that for me. It didn't work for me. That doesn't mean it doesn't work for them, that they can't manage it. I couldn't manage it. I don't want to ever manage that again. That's not something I would choose to manage. Right? So when you really give yourself the space to be real with yourself, here's who you are and where you're at, you realize that in 10 years from now, you're going to look back at this and go, oh my God, I was so immature. I was juvenile still. I was, all of this form of development. It's not fair to take someone who's, let's say, in high school and judge someone in junior high because they don't meet the standards of a high schooler. Emotionally, we develop the same way we do intellectually to a certain degree. Right? So it's unfair to judge those who are emotionally, stunted, and their behavior is showing they're stunted.
Right.
It's unfair to judge them as if they're consciously aware and they even know what they're doing. Just because you can see it and go, I've done that. Holy shit, I can see what they're doing. Holy crap, I never would have noticed that before. I would have honored the same bullshit. Now I'm out of it and I see what's going on and I'm aware. You got to let them, let them have their own lesson. They need a learning curve, just like you needed a learning curve, right? It would be no different than me saying what took you as long as you did should have taken one moment of humility. Because in the end, it took one moment of humility and it was over. Right?
Well,
but it required that you really understand it better. So you had to feel it differently than someone else might have felt it differently. So I'm not judging you. In the end, all it took was humility. So what it takes for someone to get there is unique to the individual.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So some people, like myself, I need a physical experience with it. I want to understand it. I don't want to just memorize it. To me, that's useless. If I feel it and understand it, I now have useful knowledge of it. So I'm going to put my hand on the stove. Oh, shit, that burns me. Maybe I shouldn't do that like my mom told me not to. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of that is a personality trait. But it's more curiosity. There's a curiousness to that mind. And not everybody has curiousness. Some people are extremely scared, So let them be themselves. Let them have it. Understand that they...
was me. I mean, and I think that a lot of people like me are completely emotionally immature. And so they are still... There's no tool or ability to understand these concepts until you actually... It's like, test it here, test it there, and you got to figure it out for yourself.
Yes, you do. And it has to be driven by your desire for something better.
Yeah.
And you don't even know what that is. Like, okay, so before, could I have told you this is what this is going to feel like? Could I have said, here's the plan, and this is what it's going to feel like, and here's a step-by-step process to develop those feelings?
No, and I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm there, but I can say wholeheartedly that it's so much better than I thought it would be, because I thought it would be just, more of the same sort of.
Yeah, okay. So I love what you just said, because this is typical. When you preconceived what it was, you were using your own concept of what it was from down there. So when you come up here, it's different. So if you stay in your level of thinking, it's impossible to move on.
Right.
Especially if you construct what the end result is from the lower level of thinking. You're limited. It's like
you can't imagine it.
No, because what you're imagining is with a bias and the beliefs that you have existing.
That's
right? So you'll never get out of it, because the way you're constructing your thing. So a lot of people come to me with some preconceived idea of what it feels like. And they have some preconceived idea of how fast they're going to get it. And they honestly believe that it's going to work, and they're going to lose weight in the end. And I'm like, God, it's going to be so amazing, because I'll be thin and happy, and I'll be eating to hunger.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be so motivating, because I'll stay thin when I eat to hunger.
Well, if you're miserable enough when you get to you, if you're really, really miserable enough, you'll take the pill.
I know. And that's the truth. That's the humility, right? And I think that's where, for you, it took longer. You weren't quite miserable enough. You were miserable, but not quite.
Well, yeah. Well, I've been more miserable in my life, so I know that I wasn't as miserable as I could have gotten.
I know. Isn't that the truth? It's like, oh, but it still is, you're still suffering, right? And you're still, the mental, I mean, the amount of mind that goes into what you were doing, it was heavy, mentally loaded. Mm-hmm. I mean, insane amounts of work mentally and emotionally, because of the shame that you feel like every day. And then physically feeling like shit because you're excessively eating all of these foods that you feel bad about eating. Just horrible. Yeah, until you went through the door that I described, which is permanently you're going to be fat. So when you go through that, now you open your mind up to, well, how would I reconstruct who I am? Who am I now? If that's permanent, how would I make a good life for myself? How would I feel socially? How would I feel in these environments? You actually go into observing and opening your mind to what that is. You're taking, there's like a moment of willingness to go through humility.
It almost feels like, I'm trying to describe it. It almost feels like you're shrugging off. I felt like I was like dropping a coat over the floor. All of those things that have been like, my skin. It's like shedding a skin almost. And that skin is all of the old beliefs that you have that you just have to let go of.
Yeah, and you don't know what's underneath. You don't know what's underneath the skin. You're just open to something different. My God, right? There's no knowing what it is. Correct. And that's the willingness to do that basically opens you up to what it is. And you find out, it's like all of a sudden you become aware, like, oh, this is what it is. It's not like you have to learn it. That thought of learning that's from what you were thinking before. Right? I have to learn it. So many people say, but I don't know who I am. You don't need to know. If you use what you know, you're never going to get there.
Right.
You have to shed it. I love what you just said. That's a great description. Thank you. You're shedding a layer of skin and you don't know what's underneath it. You just have to be willing to let go. This was like you letting go of the rich, sophisticated, better than you, persona that you were trained to be. I shed the religious one. I shed the athletic one too. I shed my thin one. I shed everything. I'd rather just have a new life and a new persona. But this next time, it's going to come from my heart. I don't want a new exterior version of that. I want an internal version of that. And so many people have to go through layers of shedding different types of social ideology, right?
For sure. For sure.
They get rid of religion and they take on body image.
Right.
They get rid of, drinking and alcoholism, but they take on sexualism.
Right.
They're still just shuffling around who's my new identity and how do they act in dress? That's what I'm going to do. Right?
You really have to just be able to take the first step on a journey of figuring it out. It's just seeing who you are. I mean, it's kind of fun.
Well, I would agree because you're really just doing things that are internally pleasurable. It's like when we had you go shopping for clothes that you liked versus what you thought others would perceive you as. Mm-hmm. It was like, oh my gosh, I love this pattern. I like this shirt. I'm getting it.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with being pretentious or pretending or wanting someone to think you're a certain way. It has everything to do with just you being gratifying your own sense of creativity and delight.
Right.
It's authentic, right? And then there's no pressure. No one needs to say they like it. No one needs to enjoy it. And if someone doesn't like it, you don't care because you didn't do it for them. You're not looking for there. It's not out here. It's internal. It's here. It's all guided in here.
Sometimes it's so deep down in there that you don't even know what you like. You may not even know what you really, really like or what food you really, really like because you're doing it for a completely different reason and from a completely different place. Mm-hmm. It's from a different place.
I would agree. You're right. It's not from an internal place. It's from an external place. It's out there.
Right.
Yeah. And you might not have the internal knowledge of it, but you don't have to. That's the coolest part about it. You don't really have to.
That's what you're doing. You're feeling your way around. You're just feeling your way around and seeing. And I mean, like I said, it's fun. You're seeing what makes you feel good, what hits you.
Yeah, I call that it's an internal compass.
Yeah.
And I call it's just like, it's your soul. It's the alma. It's the internal compass. It's the heart. And it's not coming from a malicious or a manipulative environment. It's just the truth of something so simple. And it's so small, right? It's not.
But it feels so much better. It feels so much true.
It's true.
It's true.
Yeah, and it's easier because you don't have to force it. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to manipulate anybody. You don't have to show it. It's like it just is. So I don't even have to work at this.
Right. It just is. Mm-hmm. That was the biggest joy that I found was that
it just is. That's the moment you go from this lower side to this other side. All it took to get there was a willingness, that surrendering, the openness to it. All it required was a moment of feeling the will. It was a will. I'm open. Mm-hmm. That's all it took. And it is. It's not like it just shows up. It's like, oh, I didn't even know this was here. You can't know what it's there unless you're willing to let go of all this other stuff.
I guess the first time this happened, I guess I almost got there. I mean, I'm hoping and praying that this is it.
Well, what's going to take it away?
Me.
You'd have to go back. You'd have to say, I want their approval. I want them to like me. I want, you have to have a need, right? You have to have something that creates a focal point in your thinking to where it becomes what you think about, right? And then all the freedom goes away because you're focused on this and you have to make it happen. And it's like going back into survival, right? So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So if you have a choice, I know for me, I remember thinking, oh my God, I don't ever want to go back there. I could live in a tent on the mountaintop by myself, totally alone, and I will still maintain this freedom because that right there, I don't know what will trigger that. I mean, it's going to have to be bad, right? Like someone's trying to kill my children. That's going to trigger it. I'll go back in. Don't mess with that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I can handle losing my job. I could handle my husband dying. I can handle those. You recontextualize. That's a coping mechanism, really. You're coping. But you don't want to have to go back into proving your worth as a human being. It's like the social trigger. to survival, I'm okay being alone. I could have a great family just living with the trees, right? It's kind of like, Tom, what's his name, who played that part where he got lost at the sea and he made friends with a volleyball. Yeah, I can make friends with a fake volleyball. The trees have energy. There's life around me. I know I'm not alone, and I don't need to feel alone. I can feel connection, that need for human connection with animals, trees, with the nature. Like, that's what I came to. I don't need another human being. So ultimately, I have permanent freedom of being who I am. And if I ever have to switch, like if I go into another culture and I accommodate to that culture, I still have an awareness of reality. I'll never become that culture again. That'd be like unknowing.
I'm really trying to go into this questioning my need for isolation so often. Because you said you don't need to be with anybody else, but you still need to connect with things.
Yeah, I think that's natural. Part of our mammal needs to need to connect, which is where I said I can connect with animals. I can connect with nature. I don't have my connection to life really doesn't need. That's the difference. Need is, I don't need it. I can actually go into my own, because I've done it before unknowingly, right? Meditation. And detach from need. That's the whole point of the Buddhism. It's like, there's no need. I don't need it. But that doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. That doesn't mean that I don't want to love my husband and to have some degree of need with him. Doesn't mean I don't have need with my children, their vulnerability, right? I just don't, my actual life isn't defined by my children. And it's not defined by my husband. And it's not defined by this space and my hat. It's not defined by me talking to you right now and people listening to this. That doesn't define who I am. It might be defining who I am in your mind, but it's certainly not how I define myself. That's what gives me freedom to say, shit, fuck, I don't care what you think, right? I can cuss. And I offended you. And I don't care that I'm offending you because it's not me that's offending. You're offending yourself by choice. So I have no attachment to anybody. That allows me to enjoy humanity. I can go to, travel with my husband, go on a date. I can do my hair up. I can wear the clothes that fit into whatever environment I'm in. And I can have fun. It's pretend. It's play. To me. To other people, they're serious. Right? They're putting me down.
Right.
They're, oh my God, look at her. She's so tall. Her butt's so big. She looks like an Amazon, Her eyelashes are so short. She really needs some fake eyelashes. Right?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to learn how to have fun. Yes, that's key because
Well, you're doing it.
Huh?
You're doing it when you say you live from the inside, right? That's fun. Now do it in a social environment where you're just being yourself with a group. Like when you have your group of friends that you say they just love you. You've been such a bitch and they just love you and they just let you do that. Go back into that environment. Maybe that's a safe environment for you to just be real.
Yeah, I still, though, have that need to get back to my home, though. You know what I mean? I want to be able to go out and have a good time, or out or in, or whatever I'm doing with other people, and not be waiting for it to be over.
Oh, I see. So socially, you go out and you just really don't want to be out anymore.
No.
That's okay.
Or when I have people over, I want it to be over so I can go put my sweatpants on and get in front of the TV.
That's something to just contemplate about. You know, maybe you're just tired. Maybe, you know, maybe the people that you normally socialize with, you're not getting that gratification anymore. You're not getting this, look at me, they think I'm so great, they thought I was the best hostess. You're not getting the same euphoria from it. So it's like,
I want to get something real from it.
So why don't you before you have people over, create a meaning for you? Maybe it's simpler. Maybe it's not so grandiose. Maybe it's just let's share a bottle of wine and talk about our week and let it go. Maybe that's as simple as it gets. You know, maybe it's a balance between your effort and what you expect from it. Maybe you used to put too much effort into it because you got so much out of it egotistically. But now it's like, can you put less effort and will they still want to be with you? You know, find a balance. Figure this out. I mean, this is like taking the life you had before and the life you constructed before with all that crazy train. And you're not changing that life. You changed yourself. So you evolve. And are these people still going to be there? They might not. They might not think that it's extravagant enough for their taste.
No, they'll be there. I just want to enjoy it while it's happening.
Yeah. Well, don't force it. Just, you'll get there. If that's how you feel, if that's the feeling you want, you will feel that next time. You're going to create it. Go into the feeling and go, what is it that I'm going to do to create that feeling when I'm hosting this event? I'm going to go there and I'm going to connect with, I want to know how they're doing. I want to, you know, have fun conversation. I want to, you know.
I want to be interested. That's key. I want to be interested.
Yeah. So create a curiosity around getting to know these people. Because before you really didn't know them anyways. You just knew who you wanted them to think you were.
That's right.
Right? So now you're actually getting to know these people. So be curious. Get to know them. Ask questions.
I really don't know them.
Well, there you have it. If you don't really know these people, it's kind of hard to be excited. But until you get to know them and you get to ask, like, you know, tell me your life story. I mean, it doesn't have to be that, but like, how was your relationship with your parents growing up? Just ask questions. That's what I do. Because I'm curious about people in a social environment. You know, what do you do for a living? Do you like it? If you could change what you could do, what would you do? Right? It doesn't have to be as complicated as you're making it. Just be okay with where you're at and let it evolve as it's evolving. Okay?
I'm good with that, yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop recording this. Anything you want to say to the listener?
No.